Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom with atbbq.com, and today we're making brisket tacos with smoked salsa. For our brisket tacos, we're going to be smoking up the brisket flat, not the point, just because it's the most accessible piece of meat to get. You can get it at any grocery store typically, so any of you out there should be able to go to the grocery store, grab a flat, and pull off this recipe. We're going to start off by injecting our brisket just to add a little extra flavor and a little better moisture retention. Here we have our brisket flat. This is a prime brisket from Creekstone Farms, some of the best beef in the world. You can see we've kind of trim this down so we have about 1/4 inch of fat over most of the surfaces here. If you can find a brisket with a little bit of fat on top, that's how I prefer it. But of course, if you don't like that fat on top, take it all the way off. And then on the opposite side, you know, any of this extra stuff, we could pick at this all day. So do as much or as little trimming on this stuff as you want to. I don't think it's gonna be super chewy in the end if we leave some of that fat on, but it certainly doesn't hurt to take it off either. Of course, when you're cooking for competition brisket, you're trimming up every little bit, you're squaring off every edge. We're not doing that today. This is just for eating. This is just for the people we care about. It's for putting food in bellies, so I'm not gonna go crazy on any of this trimming. I want to inject this sitting in this sheet pan so that the juices don't run all over the place, but I don't want it moving on me, so I'm gonna grab a wet towel, set that right on top of there, and we're good. Now for the injection, we're gonna start off with 1 cup of water and add to that 1 cup of Sweetwater Spice Trace Chili's Fajita Bath. And the Sweetwater Spice has some larger pieces in it that you'll want to strain off because they wouldn't go through that needle so easily. Now if we get a little lubrication here on the plunger and the injector, it makes it a little bit easier for it to move, especially once we tighten that down. Now when I'm injecting, what I like to do is look for the direction that the meat fibers are running, which is this direction, and then come in at about a 90-degree angle, make a little pocket, and then fill it up with the injection. And when it starts coming back out, that's how you know it's full. And then I'm gonna work in a grid pattern. So I'm gonna go here, 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 every inch or two until we've covered the entire piece of meat. Now before I stick a contaminated injection needle back into the liquid, I'm gonna pour off about a 1/2 cup here that we're gonna save to put in the wrap later on. Now you can see out of the 1.25 cup, 1.5 cups of liquid that we injected, not much has come back out, which is fantastic. And instead of wiping all that up, what I'm gonna do right now is just spread it over the surface of the meat, and this is gonna work as our binder to keep our rub stuck to the meat. All right, so we'll get rid of any excess. We've got the surface coated. Now it's time to put our rub together. The rub we're using today is primarily Cattleman's Grill 8-second ride, the carne asada seasoning, but for every 1 cup of that rub that I use, I'm gonna add to it 2 tablespoons of cumin and 1 tablespoon of coriander. So just get this mixed up pretty evenly and then straight onto the brisket. So beef really can handle the seasoning. I'm not gonna go light on it. I'm gonna get it covered. We wanna pack a lot of flavor onto this brisket. Now before I flip this and just watch all the dry stuff come off, I'm gonna let it set up for about 5 minutes. You can see how the rub has darkened in color. It's wet on the surface now, so it's really adhered pretty well. When we flip it, it doesn't all fall off. So now we're ready to season this other side. Now what I like to do when I'm leaving the fat cap on is maybe do a little scoring, try to get down to the meat. just so we have somewhere where the rub can really take hold. And then once again, just a generous coating of our rub. One cup is going to be more than enough for what you need for this size brisket flat. We'll let that set up and it'll be ready to go on the grill. Today we're cooking on the Yoder Smoker's YS640 pellet grill. We're running at 225 to start off with a combination of cherry and pecan pellets. I'm going to place this on the main cooking grate, fat side down today. That fat gives us a little bit of a barrier between the radiant heat coming off the plate and the meat. So that fat's gonna eat up some of that extra heat. And that frees up the second shelf so we can do all of the smoking for our salsa up top while the brisket cooks down below. Let's get started on this smoked salsa. We're gonna start by breaking down the vegetables, kind of opening them up so that they can really soak up as much smoke as possible on the grill today. And then we're gonna break it all down after it's smoked into a nice, fine, like restaurant style salsa. I've got 3 pounds of tomatoes. I'm just gonna cut these in half and they'll go on the grill halved. Got a couple of jalapenos, about a 1/4 pound worth. Just split these in half as well. And then about 8 ounces of yellow onion. We can go ahead and get the skin off of here. We'll leave that halved as well. Like I said before, we're just gonna put everything up here on the top shelf above the brisket while it's smoking away. I'm gonna shoot for putting about an hour of smoke on our veggies today. We'll come back and check on it 30, 45 minutes, see how it's looking. We're about an hour and 15 minutes into smoking our salsa. And I can see that this stuff is softened up a bit, starting to shrivel, so it's cooking a little. You get a really soft, subtle smoke aroma coming off of it, and this is right about where I want this stuff to be. We don't want to over smoke this. It's really not pleasant when you've got way too much smoke in your salsa. So I think at this point, we're ready to pull these off, process them, combine them with the rest of our salsa ingredients. We're going to be building and processing this salsa in the Vitamix today. Like I said, I want a really nice, smooth salsa, so we're going to break it down completely with the Vitamix. And we're going to start doing that by taking our smoked vegetables. We'll knock those down, chop them up just a little bit, and we'll move on to the rest of the ingredients that you guys haven't seen yet. All right, now with these jalapenos, just gonna get rid of the pith and the seeds here, and of course the stems. All right, there we got the jalapenos in there. And the number of jalapenos you use is all up to you. How hot do you want it? How much of that flavor do you want? I mean, it's like a lot of things with cooking. You're just gonna find out how you like it the best. Maybe you wanna use poblanos, or maybe you wanna use Anaheims instead of those. Those are all great peppers. It would all be great choices for a salsa. And then we're gonna give the onion just a rough chop. Discard the stem end. That does it for our smoked ingredients, but there's one more thing I want to add in there, and it's a couple of these chipotles and adobo sauce. These have great flavor, a little bit of heat, smokiness, earthiness. We'll start with 3 of them, and we'll adjust from there a little later on. So at this point, we're ready to add some of our aromatics. We've got some fresh cilantro. This is 1 bunch. If you mince this down, you'd get about a 1/2 cup. We'll just break it up a little bit. And of course, gotta have some garlic. We need a little bit of citrus, so we'll squeeze in some lime juice. All right, and this is ready to process. Oh, it smells amazing. I might actually want to go just a little bit thinner, so I'm going to add just a little bit of vegetable stock. All right, let's give this a taste. Smoky, for sure. Nice and bright. I think it needs a little bit more acid, so we're gonna go with a little bit more lime juice, and of course we need some salt. It's pretty dang good. I could use a little bit more heat. If you want, you can throw in some more of the chipotles and adobo. You can put in a little bit of hot sauce. So you have options. You want to think of something like this as a guideline more than a recipe. You're gonna make it how you like it. So tell you what, why don't we go ahead and do a mild and a hot. That can be our mild. And this one, we'll add a bit of our Flay Volcano to give it a kick. Wait for it. There's the burn. Love it. All right, here we are 6.5 hours into the brisket cook. Look at the beautiful color on that. Got a nice mahogany red from that combination of the pecan and cherry. This looks beautiful. I'm gonna stop the coloration right now. We're gonna wrap this thing up and cook it wrap to finish. Now you'll recall that we reserved about a half cup of our marinade injection earlier. We're gonna put that in here with the brisket as we wrap. Also, just a few dashes of the Worcestershire sauce. And we wrap just as tight as we can without puncturing the foil. That way we don't create any room for steam. And we wrap again just for the extra protection. All right, I've increased the temperature to 300 now so we can expedite the cooking process. And for that reason, I'm also gonna move it to the second shelf so we don't get too much radiant heat from that firebox coming off the diffuser. And at this point, this is going to braise the rest of the way. So we've added a little bit of liquid. Some juice is gonna come out of the brisket. Some of that fat's gonna continue to break down. And we're going to be braising the brisket within the foil packet for the rest of this time. So this is gonna take probably a couple more hours. We'll come back and check on it here in an hour. We are 7 hours into the brisket cook and it's starting to feel really tender. I wanna show you guys what we're looking for to finish this piece of meat off. All right, so there it is. If we probe this, we're getting very little resistance, which is exactly what we're looking for. This doneness, this is done to a feel. Now, if we check out the thermometer, we're looking at about 210 degrees, which is great for what we're doing with these tacos. We're gonna do some chopped brisket in these tacos. So this is perfect. At this point, we just want to loosely tint the foil and rest this thing for at least 30 minutes, an hour if we got the time. There's our rested brisket flat. Looking really good. Smelling really good. All right, so we're gonna get into this thing. They're looking at which way the muscle fibers run. They're going that way, so we're gonna go right across them. So you want to chop these down and put them back into that liquid. You're really going to rehydrate them. It's going to allow a lot of extra flavor into that meat because that juice is where all the flavor is. Just tons of flavor. And we still got some structure. This isn't just falling apart. The meat's holding together a little bit. Really tender. A little bit of back end heat. And that juice that's come out of there that we're tossing everything around in, just money. Let's talk about doneness for brisket for a minute. When it comes to your brisket, you've got options on where you want to finish it. So the the lower the temperature is when you pull that off the grill, the more structure the brisket's gonna have, right? So it's got a little bit more bite, a little bit more chew, which is great if you're doing something like chopped brisket for tacos or sandwiches or whatever it is. Although you also could let that go a little bit further. So once you get to a good hang on your brisket, something like that, where the ends actually dangle down, they're not pushing out, they're not too rigid, you know you've got a good brisket. But if you keep going, what you get is to where the brisket shreds by itself almost. But here's the danger in that. The more you cook that brisket, the more the fat and connective tissue melts out, the more juice you lose out of that brisket, and the more you risk having a dry brisket. So I prefer to err on that side where you've got a nice hang, a nice dangle, but it's not falling apart already. It's still got just a little bit of tug. Now we're gonna warm up our tortillas on the grill. And while we're doing that, add a little bit of cheese too. So we've got some pepper jack cheese going on the small flour tortillas today. I would just close the lid and let the cheese melt down. The bottoms of the tortillas aren't gonna get terribly crispy, so we'll still be able to wrap those around the brisket filling for the taco. I like to use Monterey Jack or pepper jack for this. It just melts really easy. If you prefer cheddar, that would also be a good option. So you want to remove these from the grill when they're still pliable, but that cheese is melted on top. All right, so let's build our tacos, starting with the brisket. Gosh, just looks incredible. All that extra, what essentially turns into sauce out of that juice that came from the inside of the brisket. And we'll top that off with some of our smoked salsa. Just a touch of creaminess from the Mexican crema. And finish it off with a pinch of microgreens. We've got cilantro, we've got some radish, and a little bit of arugula in there. That's a beautiful little street taco. I'm really glad that the salsa was the first thing to hit my tongue, because that's a really great salsa. I mean, it's pretty basic. It's got the touch of smoke, which of course blends pretty well with the smoked brisket. But those two things complement each other really well. And between the brisket and the slightly toasted tortilla, you got nice texture. It's soft in the middle, a little bit of crunch on the outside, the creaminess of the cheese, the Mexican crema, and then that just herbaceous burst of flavor from the cilantro, specifically the cilantro microgreens. It all works together really well. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to head over to atbbq.com to check out all the products and the tools featured in today's video. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments, or there's anything you'd like to see me cook, let me know in the comment section down below, and let's be good to one another. For more recipes, tips, and techniques, head over to thesauce.atbbq.com. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.